Welcome to this TWiP webinar free preview. Hi, my name is Frederick Van Johnson, and I'm happy to have you with us. All right, folks, welcome back to this edition of the TWiP webinar series. I'm sitting here with my friend, Mr. Rob Knight. He's the host of Your Itinerary, one of the newest shows on the TWiP network. And he has agreed to sit down and kind of do a deep dive into travel photography, obviously, and a lot of the things that go into creating a successful adventure when you're abroad or even, local areas. Some of the things that you can keep in mind, some of the things, the gear that you should bring with you, some of the things to do on the trip, after the trip, before the trip, all that stuff. He's packed all that into this presentation, this hour-long presentation for you guys so that we can all be on the same page when we're listening and watching his show, Your Itinerary. And, hopefully our travel photos will be the better for it. So, Mr. Rob Knight, you want to take it away and jump in and tell us about what you're going to tell us about?
You bet. Thanks a lot, Frederick. I'm really excited about this. One of the things that I really love to do is teach and get in front of people and talk about, what I'm passionate about. And one of those things is travel photography. So this is a great opportunity for me. And hopefully everybody's already listening to Your Itinerary for travel and photography on the TWiP network. But if not, then go to thisweekinphoto.com and definitely check that out. So my name is Rob Knight, and I'm the host of Your Itinerary. And you can reach me at rob@thisweekinphoto.com. And I'm going to talk for about an hour, as Frederick said, about travel photography. And here's a couple of things that we're going to go into. I'm going to talk about some ways to prepare and some ways to get ready to go into the field. I've talked to lots of travel photographers. Even though my show has only been on for 17 episodes now, I have another probably that many episodes already recorded in the can. And so one of the things that most travel photographers say is very important is preparation. And the more you know about the subject that you're shooting, the better your photos are going to be. And that definitely counts for travel photography as well. So the second chapter is going to be a little conversation about great photos. What makes a great travel photo? What elements should you include in a travel photography portfolio? What goes into making memorable travel photography? The third chapter is going to be some tips for on location. Okay, that as far as that goes, how to make the most of your time when you are in your far off location or down the street and you're just, you can shoot travel photography in your hometown. We just don't generally refer to it as travel photography. And then chapter 4, I'm going to try to stay away from gear as much as I can during this presentation, but we have to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about not just what I use and what I like, but just some different philosophies as far as gear, because there's a couple of schools of thought, and it's really easy to get bogged down with tons of stuff that maybe you don't need. So we'll get into that in chapter 4.
Hey, Rob, why don't you go ahead and turn on your webcam so we can see your smiling face while you're presenting?
Okay. Are you not seeing the deck?
Oh, we see the deck, yeah, perfectly. We just don't see you.
Okay, there we go. Let me see if I can do this. I might have to undo here. Sorry. Got it. Okay.
There he is.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, the controls don't show up when I'm in the slideshow. So
got it.
There you go. Okay, well, first of all, let's talk about what is travel photography. I was just reading David Duchemin's new book about travel photography the other day, and it's funny because he starts out by saying that he kind of doesn't believe in travel photography, and I really understand what he's saying. I'm going to read this definition first. The Photographic Society of America defines a travel photo as an image that expresses the feeling of a time and place, portrays a land, its people, or a culture in its natural state, and has no geographical limitations. So to me, that says travel photography is basically anything you shoot anywhere. And going back to what David Duchemin said, the idea of travel photography is that it's photography that you do while you're away from home. So if you make a portrait of somebody outside of your house, it's a portrait. If you make a portrait of somebody when you're visiting Paris, France for the first time, that's travel photography. And that's the gist of what he's saying. And I totally agree with that. But we're going to go with the assumption that we're talking about making great pictures when you're traveling. We're calling that travel photography. I think that's a pretty easy definition. And here we go. So the first chapter is going to be about getting ready to go make pictures. Some things that you do, some tools that you can use to basically set yourself up for making great pictures while you're traveling. Before we get into any nitty-gritty tools and apps and websites and things like that, I'm going to assume that you understand how to use the camera. This is not the webinar about the exposure triangle and basic photography skills. And I'm going to assume that you know all of that before we hit the road. Learning how to use your camera should be a big part of your preparation for going shooting. Just buying a camera and throwing it in your bag and going somewhere is not going to allow you to make great travel photos. You really have to understand how to use your camera. And, especially if you're taking some huge once in a lifetime trip, that's not the time to figure out where the power button is and how you adjust the aperture on your new camera and that kind of stuff. And of course, that goes out the window if you are on a photography workshop or you're otherwise expecting to have photography instruction while you're on the road. Another thing I'm assuming is that you know a little bit about composition. And this is a kind of a sore subject for me because so many people talk about how composition isn't important. And I don't agree with that at all. So I'm assuming that you're familiar with the basics of composition and how that works. Now, I'm not assuming that you think about the rule of thirds every time you press the shutter, and I'm not assuming that you think about leading lines every time you look through your viewfinder. But the fact is, some people have, quote, a good eye, and some people don't. So if you have a good eye and you naturally have a sense of composition, well, good for you. That's fantastic. A lot of talented people do that. But if you don't have that good eye, then you can practice these skills. You can study composition and learn things that usually make stronger photos. And you can apply those to your own work, and you can learn to make better images. You're not just stuck with whatever your graphic sensibility is. You can learn and practice, and the way that you practice is by learning about composition. And the way that you do that is just like you do with learning exposure and aperture and shutter speed and ISO. You practice those skills until you internalize them and you don't have to think about them. So no, when I go out to shoot, I'm not constantly thinking about all the rules of composition. I've practiced them and I understand them, and I know some ideas of how to apply those to make better pictures as far as I'm concerned. And that's kind of the deal for me. I make pictures that I like. So I know some things that I can do for my own photography that make stronger pictures for me. So you might apply totally different rules or elements or whatever you want to call them to your own photography, and they make better pictures as far as you're concerned. So the people that say you should ignore the rules and there are no rules, almost across the board, these people at some point in their career have studied composition. They understand what it is. They've internalized it. And for them to say that you should ignore the rules, I think is not the best advice, especially if you're just starting out. So let's get into some tools for planning your trip, right? You know how to use your camera. You understand a little bit about composition. I've gotten to use my smartphone or my tablet more and more and more for planning trips. And the old expression, there's an app for that. That definitely comes into play when we're talking about planning for your travel. I'm going to talk about 3 different types of apps. The airline apps. I'm based in Atlanta, so I'm on Delta's app all the time. Almost everywhere I go, I can get to directly on a Delta flight. So if you live in a different part of the country, you might be on United or whatever the airline is. Chances are they have an app already. One thing that's just starting to take off is hotel apps. I'm a Hilton Honors member, and I use Hilton, and their app is getting better and better and better to the point that now I can even check into my room a day in advance, just like I can for a flight. And the third category you might not be familiar with, I call them concierge apps. And these are ways to keep up with all of your confirmation numbers and all this information that you need for planning a trip. That normally you're going in and trying to copy emails, or I've seen people print out, all of their confirmation emails on paper and carry them around in a notebook. And these concierge apps kind of take it.
Thanks for watching this free webinar preview. If you'd like to check out the full version of this webinar, just head over to thisweekinphoto.com/shop. There you can download this webinar and others as they become available. And if you're a TWiP member, you already have access to this webinar and all other webinars as part of your TWiP membership. Thanks for watching.